The Parthenon is a Greek temple that is located on the Athenian Acropolis and was built between 447 and 438 BCE under the governance of Pericles. The temple is dedicated to the goddess Athena, and it was built as a celebration of Greek victory over the Persians during the Greco-Persian Wars. It is considered the pinnacle of Greek architectural achievement. Let's start by covering the anatomy of Greek temples. Most Greek temples are very similar in design. Here are some of the basic aspects that are present in almost every temple. The stylobate is the base of the temple. It usually has an odd number of steps leading up to the main floor so that if you start climbing with your right foot, you will also enter the temple on the same foot. On top of the stylobate and supporting the overhead structure are a series of columns that are usually organized in rows called colonnades. The tops of these columns are called capitals. Resting across the tops of the columns is a beam called the architrave. On top of that is another beam called the frieze that has alternating panels of decorative sculptures called metopes with panels that contain vertical grooves called triglyphs. On top of the frieze is a horizontal decorative molding that is called the cornice. On top of the cornice and under the roof is a triangular section called the pediment that often contains sculptures. For example, the pediments of the Parthenon contain scenes of the birth of Athena and the battle between Athena and Poseidon. Everything that sits on top of the columns can be collectively referred to as the entablature. While many Greek temples are similar in design, they still have some unique differences. Here are some of the classifications of Greek temples according to Vitruvius. It is considered a temple in antis when it has antae that extend out in front of the walls that enclose the inner chamber, which is known as the cella, and there are 2 columns in between the antae. A pro-style temple is similar to a temple in antis, except that it has columns in the front corners where the antae would have been. An amphi-pro-style temple is similar to a pro-style temple, except that it has the same arrangement of columns in the back as in the front. It is considered a peripteral temple when it has 6 columns in the front and back, with 11 on each side, including the corner columns, and when there is enough space between the walls of the cella and the outer colonnades to form a walkway all the way around the temple. It is considered to be a pseudo-dipteral temple when it has 8 columns in the front and back with 15 on each side. The front and back walls of the cella should be directly over and against the 4 middle columns with space of a whole colonnade between the cella walls and the outer colonnade all the way around. The dipteral temple also has 8 columns in the front and back with 15 on either side, only it has 2 rows of columns all the way around the cella, and if you were counting, I missed a row. It is considered a hypaethral temple when it has 10 columns in the front and back with 19 on either side, in addition to 2 tiers of columns on the inside of the cella. The central part is open to the sky, and it has folding doors on each end. Here is the Parthenon plan. It can be classified as an amphi-prostyle peripteral temple. It has a cella or naos, which is the inner chamber, and a pisthedomos, which was used as a treasury for the city of Athens, and a pronaos, or vestibule, in the front of the temple. Its colonnade consists of 8 by 17 Doric order columns. The cella of the Parthenon housed the statue of Athena, which was created by the Greek sculptor Phidias. According to Vitruvius, Greek temples can also be categorized into classes based on the size of their intercolumniation, also known as the spacing of their columns. Intercolumniation is measured in terms of column diameters. It is considered a pycnostyle temple if its intercolumniation is that of 1.5 column diameters. It is a systyle if the intercolumniation is that of 2 column diameters. It is diastyle if the intercolumniation is that of 3 column diameters. It is areostyle if the intercolumniation is that of 4 column diameters. However, this class of intercolumniation is not recommended because it is very broad and low and isn't strong enough to support marble or stone architraves and must be therefore made out of wood. It is considered U-style if it has the intercolumniation of 2 1/4 column diameters everywhere except for between the middle columns, where it will be that of 3 column diameters. The colonnades that run on the outside of the Parthenon have an intercolumniation of 1 1/4 column diameters. Columns in Greek temples utilize the post and lintel weight-bearing system. This is a fundamental building technique where heavy horizontal elements are held up by strong vertical elements or supports. This technique can be dated back to prehistoric structures. Because of the immense size of the Parthenon, there are some design elements that need to be altered in order for it to maintain its perfect appearance. Without optical corrections, the stylobate would appear to sag, and the columns would appear to have an outward tilt. The optical adjustments include the curvature of the stylobate, which is more than is simply required for drainage, and the inward inclination of the columns. There are 3 main orders that were used in Greek architecture. These orders are architectural styles that became popular in successive time periods and can be distinguished by the design of their columns. The Doric order is characterized by a plain circular capital and a column that rests directly on the stylobate. The Ionic order is characterized by a capital that has a scroll design and a base that separates it from the stylobate. The Corinthian order is the most ornate of the 3 orders, and it is characterized by its flowering capital design. Greek temples were greatly inspired by the human body. According to Vitruvius, just like the human form has symmetry and proportion between all of its parts, a Greek temple also has symmetry and proportion that governs its design. The most notable of these proportions is that of the human height, which is approximately 6 times the length of the foot. This relationship was observed by early Greek architects and was incorporated into the design of the temple columns, which are approximately 6 times as tall as they are wide, and therefore were thought to exhibit the proportions, strength, and beauty of the body of a man. The column height to base ratio was 6:1 for early Doric designs, became 7:1 for later Doric designs, and 9:1 for Ionic designs. The temple module from which the proportions of Greek temples are calculated can often be found in the metope and triglyph spacing in the frieze. For the Parthenon, the metope width is 1,287 millimeters, which was discovered through computer analysis of the Parthenon dimensions to be 3 1/4 feet. This means that the Parthenon foot was found to be 343 millimeters, a measurement which could represent almost all the dimensions in the Parthenon as integers. This Parthenon foot is larger than the standard Attic foot of the time by 1/6, which gives the Parthenon the distinctive numerical value of 7, which is specifically associated with Athena. The use of the Parthenon foot for analysis illuminates some interesting relationships. While the ratio of 9:4 has been known for a long time to represent the outer dimensions, a new ratio of 3:2 has been discovered between the dimensions of the inner chamber to the dimensions of the outer structure. This happens to be the fundamental ratio used in Pythagorean tuning, and represents the musical interval of a perfect fifth. This discovery reveals insights into the design of the Parthenon as being a piece of musically inspired architecture, since it has been noted that the same ratios that are pleasing to our eyes are also pleasing to our ears.